Hey there, fellow knowledge seekers.
Yeah.
Ever wonder how, like, a simple benefit, something like a cost of living allowance,
TCOLIs.
COLA, yeah, could, like, spark a huge legal battle that goes all the way up to the Supreme Court?
Happens more often than you think.
Buckle up, because today we're diving deep into this case from the Philippines, Gubat Water District versus Commission on Audit.
This one had everyone talking.
It really boils down to, can employees be forced to give back money they got, like in good faith, even if a court later says, whoops, they weren't actually entitled to it?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question.
It is. It really gets to like the heart of how our legal system tries to balance, how the law is interpreted over time with, just being fair.
Right.
Okay, so let's set the scene. All right, we're in the Philippines,
Beautiful country.
specifically Sorsogon
Okay.
and the Gubat Water District. Let's just call them GWD. How about that?
Sounds good.
They're giving their employees KLA.
Seems pretty standard, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, KLA is meant to, help employees keep up with the rising cost of living, right?
For sure.
But in this case, the controversy comes from this, really tangled web of laws and presidential decrees going back decades.
Okay, so let's untangle this web.
Right.
Where do we even begin?
So our story starts way back in 1979
Okay.
with President Marcos
Okay.
issuing a Letter of Instruction 97,
LOI 97.
LOI 97, there you go,
Gotcha.
which gave CLA to government workers.
Okay.
And this included people who worked for government-owned or controlled corporations.
GOCCs.
GOCCs, exactly.
Okay, got it.
So you'll hear that a lot.
All right, so LOI 97, that set the stage for government employees and folks in GOCCs to get KLA. Makes sense.
Makes sense.
What happened next?
All right, fast forward to 1989,
Okay.
and we have a new law enters the picture.
Ooh, new.
Republic Act 6758,
Okay.
or RA 6758.
Got it.
It's also called the Compensation and Position Classification Act, and it basically tried to make salaries the same across the government.
Standardize them.
Standardize, yeah, that's the word.
Okay.
So it took all these different allowances and put them into these standardized salaries.
So did RA 6758 specifically talk about KLA? Was KLA like one of the allowances that got rolled into these new salaries?
That's where it gets kind of murky.
Okay.
RA 6758, it didn't specifically say whether KLA was, integrated or not.
Yeah.
And then to make things even more complicated,
No.
the Department of Budget and Management,
DBM.
DBM, you got it, they issued Circular Letter No. 10.
Also known as?
DBM CCC No. 10.
Okay, I'm writing this down. Lots of acronyms.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
But anyway, the circular, it basically stopped KHOLE payments.
Okay, hold on. So we got LOI 97 that says government employees, including those in GOCCs, they should be getting KLA.
Right.
Then we got RA 6758. This one's trying to make all the salaries standard, but it's not really clear about what's up with KLA. And then the DBM comes in and says, nope, no more KLA. It sounds like a recipe for a lot of confusion.
Yeah, it definitely was. And then it gets even more complicated.
Oh, well.
Yeah, because in 1991,
Correct.
the Supreme Court, they clarified in another case, Davao City Water District versus Civil Service Commission,
Okay.
that local water districts, like the GWD we're talking about,
Uh-huh.
they're actually considered GOCCs.
Okay, so now local water districts, they're officially part of the GOCC club.
Exactly.
But what about that DBM circular that stopped the KLA payments? Did that hold up in court?
That's where the case takes a really interesting turn.
Ooh, I like interesting turns.
In 1998, the Supreme Court, they kind of drop a bombshell in this case, DeGees versus Commission on Audit.
Okay.
And they ruled that DBM CCC Null 10, remember that circular?
I do, the one that stopped KLA?
Yeah, that one, they said it's actually not valid because it was never published properly.
Wow, talk about a legal curveball. So does that mean, all those years when people thought KLA payments were stopped, they were actually valid all along?
Well, that's what the GWD thought.
Yeah.
They had these rulings, the Davao City Water District and Jesus rulings, and they thought, okay, we have a good legal basis to pay our employees CCOLA.
Right.
They even got legal opinions to back them up.
So what'd they do?
So in 2004, the GWD board, they said, all right, let's pay all that back, TOLA, going all the way back to 1992.
So they were like, we got to make this right. Let's get our employees what they should have gotten.
Exactly.
Seems like a fair move, right?
From the GWD's perspective, totally fair.
Totally. Uh-oh, there's a but.
There's always a but.
There is.
This is where the Commission on Audit comes in.
The COA.
The COA, yeah. They enter the scene and they're basically like, hold up, those payments, you aren't supposed to make those. You got to give that money back.
Talk about a roller coaster ride, geez.
It is, right?
So on one side, we have the GWD and their employees. They're saying they had the right to pay and get KOA based on the laws and the court rulings. But then the COA is over there saying, nope, give the money back.
Exactly.
So what did, the lower courts, what did they have to say about all this?
Well, both the COA regional office and the COA commission proper, they sided with the COA.
Oh.
They basically said that local water districts, they weren't specifically named in LOI 97's list of who gets the benefits, so they weren't entitled to KOA.
So they were like, well, it doesn't say local water districts right there in the LOI, so no KOA for you.
Yeah, very literal interpretation.
Yeah.
Without thinking about those later rulings that said local water districts were GOCCs.
Right, right.
And that's exactly what the GWD argued when they appealed to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
They were like, look, it wouldn't have even made sense to include local water districts in LOI 97.
Yeah.
Because back then, they weren't even officially considered GOCCs until 1991. That's years after LOI 97 came out.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
So it sounds like the Supreme Court had a lot to, unpack with this case, a lot to figure out.
They did.
What were the specific, issues that they focused on in their decision?
Well, they broke it down into three main questions.
Okay, hit me with them.
First, were employees of local water districts like the GWD, were they even entitled to COLA under that original LOI 97?
Okay, that's question one. Makes sense.
Second, were GWD employees entitled to those KOA differentials?
The back pay.
Yeah, based on that Durius's case ruling.
Right, okay, so that's question two.
And third, if they said those GOA payments were, a mistake, were the GWD employees and the people who authorized the payments, were they responsible for paying the money back?
Okay, three big questions. I'm on the edge of my seat. What did the Supreme Court decide?
This is where it gets really interesting. The Supreme Court, in their decision from October 1st, 2019, case number GR No 222054.
Got it.
They actually sided with the GWD.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they confirmed that local water districts, they were covered by LOI 97.
So they were entitled to KLA.
And therefore entitled to KLA, yep.
Okay.
They referenced another case, Metropolitan Naga Water District versus Commission on Audit.
Okay.
Which had already kind of set that precedent.
So a win for the GWD.
A win, yeah.
What about the KLA differentials, though?
The back pay.
The back pay, yeah. Did the court, say those payments were okay based on that DeShisis ruling?
So this is where all those little legal details really come into play. The Supreme Court, they said, yeah, the GWD employees were technically entitled to KLA under LOI 97.
Okay.
But they said things had changed.
Of course.
With RA 6758 and all the clarifications that came after it.
Right.
They specifically talked about Republic versus Hannibal Cortez.
Yeah.
And Belen Water District versus Lopez.
Great.
Both of those cases said that KLA was already built into those standardized salaries under RA 6758.
Unless it was specifically excluded.
Unless it was specifically excluded.
Oh,
right?
So kind of a right for the wrong reasons situation.
Yeah. Exactly.
They were right to pay QLA, but those payments ended up being extra because QLA was already in their salaries.
Exactly. It's like getting paid twice for the same thing.
Oh, that's a mess.
It really highlights how important it is to understand how laws change over time and how court decisions can totally change things even when you think everything's settled.
Yeah, for sure.
But the big question was still, did those employees who already got those COLA payments, did they have to give the money back?
Right. Because technically it was paid, in error. So did the Supreme Court say, give it back?
Well, this is where the court kind of showed some mercy,
Okay.
They acknowledged that both the GWD and the employees, they were acting in good faith, based on what they knew at the time.
They weren't trying to cheat the system or anything.
Exactly. They had legal opinions. They had those previous court rulings. Everything seemed legit.
Right.
And there was nothing that said they were being, sneaky or anything.
Okay.
So because of that good faith, the Supreme Court said, nope, they don't have to give the money back.
Wow. So a win for the GWD and a big sigh of relief.
Right.
For those employees, I bet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I bet that caused a lot of talk in the legal world.
Oh, yeah. This case, it got people talking.
That's what it did.
About how to interpret laws, and how important it is for the government to be clear about what they mean.
Yeah.
And the whole concept of good faith when the laws are always changing.
Right. Makes you wonder, are there other benefits out there with super complicated legal histories behind them.
Probably.
So for our listeners out there, what are the big takeaways from this deep dive into this GWD case?
Well, it teaches us a lot about rules and regulations and how courts interpret them, right?
Yeah.
It shows how important it is to stay up to date with the law.
Hmm.
You can't rely on, like, old info.
Yeah.
You got to know what's current.
It's like expecting your favorite coffee shop to still have your go-to drink, but
Yeah.
then you get there and the menu's totally different.
Exactly.
So stay informed.
Stay informed, yeah. And it also shows how getting expert advice can save you from, like, big mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're not sure if something's legal, talk to a lawyer.
Like, peace of mind is worth it.
Totally. And one more thing, document everything you do.
Oh.
Like, keep records of your decisions, your actions.
That sounds like a lot of paperwork.
It might be, but it can really help prove you are acting in good faith if there's ever a problem later.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah,
So those are like some really practical tips.
they are.
And I think, it's good to remember that it's okay to like question things, challenge the way things are.
Yeah.
Like this GWD case, it shows us that even stuff that everyone thought was true can get overturned if it doesn't line up with the real purpose of the law.
Absolutely. You got to think critically.
Yeah. Especially with all these complicated rules and laws that are always changing.
Yeah.
I think we've like really explored this GWD case and what it means for like making sense of the law.
Yeah, we've covered a lot.
Anything else for our listeners before we wrap up this deep dive?
Yeah, I think this case shows how important it is to, like, not just know the law, but to understand, where it came from, how it's been interpreted over time,
Yeah.
and how, like, previous court decisions shape how it's applied today.
Right.
Like the GWD case, it shows that even stuff that people thought was settled, it can be looked at again, reinterpreted, when there's new information or new legal stuff happening.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that like to really get justice and fairness,
Yeah.
we got to be like constantly paying attention, be willing to adapt,
Yeah.
and really committed to like finding the truth, even when it's like buried under a ton of legal stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
It also shows us that these cases aren't just about, abstract ideas.
No, they're about real people.
They affect real people's lives
livelihoods.
and have real consequences.
Absolutely.
In this case, it's good that the Supreme Court's decision, it ended up being fair and made sense.
Yeah.
And it saved those employees from having to pay back a bunch of money.
Could have been a big burden for them.
Yeah, yeah.
It sets a good example for, like, thinking about good faith and how laws change over time when similar situations come up.
This has been like a super insightful deep dive.
It has.
The Gubat Water District case really shows that the law isn't always like black and white.
Yeah, there are definitely gray areas.
And sometimes like even a little bit of color.
Exactly.
So before we wrap things up, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I'd say don't think of this case as just some, legal battle that happened a while ago.
Yeah.
Think of it as a reminder that the law, at its core, it should be about doing what's right.
And protecting people who are acting in good faith.
Exactly.
That's a perfect way to end things.
It is.
The Gubat Water District case, even though it's complex, it shows us that the law should work for the people.
Not the other way around.
Couldn't agree more.
Well said.
So if you enjoyed this, like, exploration of the GWD case, make sure to,
Like, subscribe.
subscribe, share it with your friends.
Yeah, spread the knowledge.
And as always, stay curious.